I was talking with Alex Payton yesterday, our content director, and I said, hey, let's see if Craig's available. Obviously, you spent time with Visit Mississippi as the executive director, had an incredible run there. But the career prior to that was what I wanted to focus on. In your career in advance at the White House, around presidential events, around candidate events, around conventions, security, what this is supposed to look like, how it's supposed to function, because Saturday clearly is not the way that things were supposed to go when we had the attempted assassination of President Trump.
Absolutely. It was tragic the way that it happened, but it surely ended up on a much better note and a blessed note for the president. Not the way that events would be planned. That would be the worst case scenario, what you would for an outcome. But for events like this, and if you'd like to just dive into this particular event, I think I want to say before we get started, the working relationship with the presidential or vice presidential advance offices, the Secret Service, the White House military office would work hand in hand on every event. No matter where he went, that was the package. And of course, the press corps would come along with us to cover the event. So great working relationship, and couldn't do any of it without the others. I mean, the Secret Service would take the orders from the White House and where the president wanted to go, where the campaign wanted him to go, what we were expecting, what size of crowd, what state, and we'd lay out the plan, and then the security would, Secret Service would put their security blanket around it, and the White House military would support it with Air Force One helicopters and communication. So that was your basic 1, 2, 3, but we couldn't work without each other. So there was always, and still is, a great relationship with them. So what you saw happen on TV was a breakdown. At some way, I know they're still trying to put this together. Look, there's a full investigation. It's obvious the questions that people are asking. How did it happen? Not just the why it happened. First, how did it happen? And the why will come later, I'm sure. But if you'd like, I can just start on how an event is built and what the expectations are.
Let's do that. Before we do, so you did this for a living for a really long time at the White House level, the presidential level for President Bush. My time in this was about 2.5 weeks long. But after the debate in Oxford in 2008, Senator McCain's staff, they were short-staffed going into that final couple of weeks of the election. And so I had the opportunity, because of some events that we had done surrounding the debate, to actually go on the road, and I worked as an advance lead for the last 2 weeks. I went and shadowed at an event in Denver, and then went and put together an event in Ohio, Defiance, Ohio, and then one in Roswell, New Mexico. And, I mean, it was a crash course. But one of the things that stands out to me is what you were talking about a second ago, and that was the relationship between the campaign, so it was the McCain campaign at that time, not a sitting president, but you didn't have a sitting president on either side, because the candidate, Barack Obama, was doing the exact same thing all over the country as well, and the Secret Service. I mean, multiple meetings that I had as the lead on those small events in comparison to some of what we're talking about, where you're sitting down and you're saying, okay, what's the plan? And logistics from the time the candidate landed, wherever they were, transportation to the event, perimeter security, where media was going to be, where people were going to be, where people couldn't go. And all of those things were covered in great detail. That was 20 years ago, or almost 20 years ago. So I just wanted to underscore that relationship you're talking about that existed between the Secret Service and the people who are putting these events together. Those events don't happen without that relationship existing.
Not at all. Not at all. From, like you said, from the time the order is given, whether it's from the campaign or the White House, here's where we want to go. But maybe we're doing 5 cities in the same day. So then you got 5 teams planning each event, same scenario, same concerns. Ultimately you want your candidate to be safe. You want a good photo from the event. You want a good message. You want the sound system to work. You want the crowd to feel comfortable. You want If it's outside, you want good weather, and those are all the things that you want to come away with. But then you surely don't want to break down in security, break down in communications, the military, the planes late, whatever, the cars don't make it. There's all those other moving targets that you don't take for granted. Those are all rehearsed, from riding the routes to, all right, we're going to give a speech in this big field. We got to break this field down from 700 yards down to 100 and secure it. And we're looking at that field for 3 or 4 days on how it can be built, how it can be secured.
Right.
Final walkthroughs, aerial views of every inch of that place for all those things we discussed. Not just the safety, but the look, the camera shots, everything that you want is just gone over in great detail. I mean, just I can't fathom how what happened slipped through the cracks.
So that was going to be my question for you. How did Saturday happen? Because you've seen that, and one of the things you said, I mean, like aerial maps, like you're looking at, okay, where are the potential threats? Right. In a worst-case scenario, where could something happen? And a building that's 150 yards, that's got high ground of the view of the dais, that's it. That's where you start in terms of
zero.
How do we secure this?
Well, here, without being there and just me looking at what happened,
right,
and what's happening around. One, President Trump, former President Trump, is a candidate right now, so he does not have the same security level as President Biden. So
Correct.
Just the assets and everything that goes along with it. If that were President Biden speaking there, you probably couldn't get within 3 miles of not going through security checkpoints. And so possibly, maybe they were shorthanded and they didn't have that, but still that would have been the first place that I would have secured. I'd have a policeman up on the rooftop from 6 a.m. in the morning, just like that. And that's what they normally would do. It's that if we can't put an extra sniper up there, we'll have someone up there on the roof or someone down at the base. That's the big miss and how that happened. But then once it did happen, as you saw it unfold in the crowd, screaming, hey, he's going up on the roof, he's got a gun, okay? And there are snipers that apparently already had him in view and were not given the call, the go to take him out, which that I've never heard of. If there was someone at an event that had a shot with a gun looking at the president, he's done, he or she. I mean, so they're not waiting. They're not waiting on a call.
No questions asked.
No.
Exactly. It's like you have orders. If there's a threat, eliminate the threat.
Yeah. And, these snipers can hit a Coke can from 1,000 yards. I mean, the fact that they were only 100 yards from him, was a layup. So something didn't happen there either. The fact he got 7 shots off before they shot him. So that's what we're watching, what happened. Then you say, well, now we're analyzing the event. So where was the breakdown? Where, there metal detectors for everybody to get in. How did he get in with a gun? Was it planted? Was it hidden on the grounds somewhere? Why didn't the bomb dogs pick it up? Why, how did he get there with a gun? Through the traffic, the crowd, everyone else went through a metal detector, security, bomb sweeps, everything. That's where you start using the C word, and the C word is conspiracy. How did he get in front of all those people and get on the rooftop?
We're going to pick this conversation up in a second, and we're almost on the same wavelength right now, Craig, because I was going to say to you when we come back, and we'll talk about this when we come back, I kind of feel like I'm about the farthest person from a conspiracy theorist. No tinfoil hats here. I'm not suspecting every black helicopter. But you can't help but ask the question, how did this happen, and is there something else going on? We'll explore that question a little bit when we come back. Craig Ray, former executive director of Visit Mississippi, and Office of Advance with the White House for the Bush administration. Quick time out. It's the Gallo Show on SuperTalk Mississippi. We're back with you right after this. Behind the scenes, and we're continuing our conversation with Craig Ray, former executive director of Visit Mississippi. He was the chief hospitality officer for the state of Mississippi. I just completely made that up. I don't even know if that's close to reasonable, but I feel like that would look great, Craig, on a business card. Also,
Former.
Former. I said he was.
Right.
Also former Office of Advance at the White House during the Bush administration, and so comes with a very unique perspective of the events of Saturday in Pennsylvania with the assassination attempt. Thankfully, not anything that ever happened on Craig Ray's watch when he was working in advance for the White House. We were talking. You said the C word right before the break, and that word being conspiracy. The question is, I think, was this intentional by someone? Because is it possible to have a lapse at what should be like a baseline of protection? Like at the very entry level, it's like you said a second ago, that building should have been ground zero because of just how obvious it was. Was it too obvious, and so it wasn't intentional? Was there a communication breakdown that like technology wasn't able to overcome? How do you explain it, Craig? Because I don't think we want it to be a conspiracy. We're not looking for that to be the answer. It's like we want a real explanation that's plausible.
Well, I was referring more that on the C word, as we'll call it, that there is no way a young kid, 20-year-old, could have pulled this all off by himself without some help, assistance, guidance. He got the rifle from his dad. His dad had 20 rifles at the house. He was on the rifle team, got kicked off the rifle team, but obviously was well-versed in shooting a gun. How did he know to get to that spot? How did he know what the yardage would be, that he'd have a couple seconds to shoot and get set up there? Who helped him get to all those places? How did he figure out that the Secret Service, that's where the event was going to be? They only planned it 3 or 4 days out. Those are the behind-the-scene questions I would be asking. How did this? Well, of course, he was shot, but now they have access to his phone and other things. So I just, in using that word, conspiracy, it just meaning there were more people involved, and it was planned. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go shoot the president today. Let me see if I can figure this one out. There was a plan, and I think, and how could that spot of the venue, the most ground zero, just be available? For him to just scoot up the wall with the gun, it's just beyond my comprehension. And I'm sure those are the same questions that others are asking, but that's what we're talking about today.
And when, Craig, we get new information, it's almost like it spawns more questions. Like the news that comes out yesterday that security personnel, I guess police officers, had seen this guy. They had seen that he was there and looked suspicious and had taken a picture of him. And then we have the eyewitnesses that saw him on the roof of the building in plenty of time to neutralize or remove or take care of this. And it's like things that should have happened just kept not happening.
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe that leadership, as we discussed, starts at the top. And so if there were not strong measures in place, if this happens, you can shoot. If this happens, you can take this upon yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe as the other part of that relationship term that I talked about earlier is that same advance team, you would rely on the local mayor or the local senator to get volunteers and stuff. Secret Service would rely on the local police to give them support at the perimeters, extra manpower to post different areas. Maybe in this small town they were shorthanded. Maybe they didn't have enough cops. Apparently Jill Biden was in the state too on an event, and so she took away a lot of the resources there in the state. So there could be just little slippages here and there that allowed that. That very well could have happened. But even then, when it happened, there's ways to recover once it did happen. And I thought the agents did a great job on the stage once it happened to get the president to the floor and the ground and get him protected until they could neutralize the spot. You immediately, not laughing, but you find out what your role is as an advance person when that happens. And we would do the same rehearsals. We'd watch them go through it. And basically your role is to get out of the way at that point, but also, if you can, to help them clear a path to get out of the event. But at that point, it's their event, and you're just trying to help other guests and, just let that develop before you have to clean up. So
forgive the sports analogy, but it's almost like, okay, once a baseball game starts, the umpire is in control.
That's right.
Until that game ends. He is the one that is in control. And, yes, you may have an auxiliary role, but you are not in charge anymore once the event actually starts.
That's right.
Just a couple of minutes left. Let's switch gears just for a second from field events to convention. This is something that is planned a long time in advance. There are a million security procedures that are in place. There are plans for everything that happens. What does that look like from a preparation standpoint? You've been to conventions. You've seen these. You've worked them. How is a convention in a controlled location that's known for a long time in advance different than a field event that comes together in a pretty short amount of time?
At this point, again, you're focusing on the president, your boss, to get him where he needs to go. So you just have to feel good that building's been secure for months at a time, and you're working on your routes and not taking for granted that the sound works and everything. You're going through your normal checkpoints, just in a much bigger room, and rehearsals with the president so he can go out on the stage and do sound. It's an event, and it's just there's a lot more going into it that is out of your hands. But they've been there for a month. The building is secure. It's been swept a million times and probably swept again that day. Remove everybody from the building, start over the next day. Very routine. But ultimately, in the end, we go back to the beginning of our conversation. You want it to be a safe room, a great speech, great photos, great for the media, the guests. But you're still very in tune to all those issues. It's just a much bigger venue at a much higher level. So but you still have to keep it in mind. It is truly an advanced effort to get the president where he needs to go, have all the things that he needs, working with your Secret Service and military. You're a little small component into this big event that's happening. Once the president leaves the room or arrives, it's all the other delegates and other speakers, and then you come into that world and it becomes a presidential event. So it's a whole different animal. But security the same. They have snipers. They just take it to a different level inside.
Craig Gray visiting with us. Last thing for you. I don't know that there's any level of government that is completely immune from partisan politics, right? Whether you're talking about the judicial or appointments or anything else. But I'm talking about at the leadership level, at the highest level. You worked with the rank and file members of the Secret Service, the people that were tasked with protecting the president on a day-in, day-out basis. Did you ever see politics enter into protection detail, or were those men and women able to say, look, I may have voted for you, I may not have voted for you, but my job is this?
I, frankly, through the hundreds of events that I was involved in, other than the person who was the head of the detail, who was appointed by the president, all the rest would have worked up through the system to be where they are, whether they protected a Democrat before and now they're on a Republican. But the politics word never came in. Both presidents that I worked for were very popular with the Secret Service and the military, a lot of loyalty. For all the family that they protected, never that word that you just asked for me, I never saw that take place. They signed up for that job. They signed up to protect the president, amongst other things that they do as agents. But they know what they got themselves into when they signed up. And then there's that loyalty to the ones that like the person, but there's never been one that I'm going to jump the other way when the bullets start firing. No.
So while they were protecting the person, they were protecting the institution, the presidency, if you will, as opposed to just the president.
Yes.
Craig, thanks so much for spending some time with us. It's an incredible peek behind the curtain from somebody who has done this. Always appreciate your time and good to visit.
thank you, and enjoy the rest of your visit there, and hope the rest of the convention goes.